Today's live class, I will be dealing with some important questions which have been asked related to British literary ages, their comparisons, their important characters, authors, books, and some particular trends related to those things. So we'll be talking about primarily two particular ages: the golden age of literature, Elizabethans, and the golden age of literature, Victorians. Many of you, those who are already working hard and have gone through our lectures, you must be knowing various ages have given you chronological details, and you must know that there are two proper golden ages of English literature: the Elizabethans and the Victorians. So we'll be talking about these age, and along with that, as you already know, we have talked about the introductions of chronological introductions of all other ages: Anglo-Saxons, Chaucer, then Elizabethans. Then after Elizabethan, we have, the Jacobeans, then Cavaliers, then Puritans, then Restoration, then Augustines, then Preromantics, Romantics, Victorians, moderns, postmoderns, and the contemporary. Most of the students, they get confused that why Elizabethan age is called a golden age of literature. Age of Chaucer, when English language came, first person who started writing in English, English became a language of literature. It replaced French and Latin from school syllabus. Then why not Chaucer's age is called the first golden age? So here we have some answers. You have to pen down these things, take your copies, and make sure you write down these things. So friends, first thing, we cannot say Chaucer's age as a golden age. No doubt Chaucer was first in certain things. Chaucer was one of the first writers, first storyteller, first travelogue writer, first narrator, first person to use heroic couplet, first person to use rhyme royals. So Chaucer was first in certain things. But he was not experimenting in poetry. He was not experimenting in sonnets, in lyrics, in drama. So variety was not there. No doubt Chaucer is called earliest of the great moderns or the grandfather of English authors. But still, he was not experimenting in various things. So Elizabethans, because after Chaucer there is a dark age, the age of non-productivity, when there was nothing new in literature, and there were hundred of wars were going on, the War of 100 Years, then apart from the War of 100 Years, some War of 30 Years, some other issues, the War of Spanish Succession, everything was going on. In Elizabethans, when Queen Elizabeth, she becomes the queen and takes the charge of England in 1558. She comes and controls all the rebels first, establishes peace, religious harmony. That was the time of the rise of university with scholars. So during this time, when the university with scholars, they came, the courses Oxbridge, Oxford, Cambridge, they started dramaturgy courses. So this was the age that Queen Elizabeth was far better, more liberal, and she was the one that she allowed people to become the patrons. So the poets had patrons, the musicians had patrons, the dancers had patrons. In short, anybody who was having artistic talents, anybody who had creative talent, they all had a patron. Now what happens when you have a patron? If you are an artist, but you have to work hard for your salary, for your incomings, to survive in a society, you have to compromise your art. There are so many people that don't want to become teachers. There are so many people that don't want to study. They want to focus on their guitars, they want to focus on their cricket, they want to become a biker. But then, what do our parents say? Our parents say that you must earn, and to earn, you must have a salary, a government job. So forget your talent. In Elizabethans, those talented people, they got a assurance that you will have a mentorship, you will get salary, you will get income. Don't worry. So the art became better. Poetry, lyrics, odes, sonnets, long epical poetries, pastorals, eclogues, everything came in Elizabethans. A great variety of poetry. Then in drama, comedy, tragedy, romantic tragedy, then tragic comedy. All these things came. Then revenge tragedy, the supernatural tragedy. So in the drama also they had varieties. And then Francis Bacon, John Knox, Samuel Purchas, they came with the prose writings, Walter Raleigh, travelogue writings, Francis Drake, travelogue writings. So they had a travel writer, they had dramatists, they had poets, they had prose writers. This is the reason that Elizabethan age was actually the age where literature from all sides, multiple branches, literature from all sides was flourishing. This is the reason the Elizabethan literature is called the golden literature, golden age, also known as the nest of the singing birds. Please remember this point. The nest of the singing birds. Now, the another thing, why Victorians are called the golden age? Just like Elizabethans, in Victorians also, we found a new variety. Victorian poetries were primarily dealing with optimism and pessimism or the balance. Optimism, pessimism, or the balance. While Victorian novels were picking up the stories from all the corners. Victorian poetries and Victorian novels, along with the Victorian prose writings, non-fiction writings, they were leading the world. They were being read by the world. They were representing the world. The perfection of Victorian poetry is dealing with exact reality. The perfection of Victorian novels dealing with exact reality. That was the thing, that the Victorians were also portraying the human conditions, realistic human approaches, and were called the great Victorians, the eminent Victorians. They are also called the golden age of literature. Now comes the question that which one is actually the golden age of literature? Elizabethans. Elizabethans actually is the golden age of literature because in Victorians there is a lot of sadness, poverty, unemployment, harsh realities. Elizabethans are far away from these things. You will not find even a single example in Elizabethans where you will find a poor man, poverty concept. Nothing like that. You will not find anything like that. In Victorians, you'll find a lot of poor people, hungry people, starving people, dying because of bad health, because of malnutrition. So technically, the Elizabethan is the real golden one. Then another debate is that what is the major difference between pre-romanticism and romanticism? As you know, pre-romanticism, some people say that pre-romanticism is not that romantic, so why we use the word romantic for it? See, it is actually a transition phase, a transition time from here to here, the transition. So the transition means that they are not confirmed romantic age. It is a moment. They are moving from this to that. So they are going like this from neoclassicals to romanticism. That process, that effort to go to romanticism, that particular time genre has been called pre-romanticism. Normally, if you feel like if somebody questions you that why to call it pre-romantics and you don't want to call it pre-romantics, it's all right. Call it age of transition. Age of transition is the only reason we have another phrase for it. Some people who don't want to call it the age of romanticism or pre-romanticism call it the age of transition. But the perfect romanticism comes after 1798, when Wordsworth came with lyrical ballads, 23 poems, 4 by Coleridge, 19 by Wordsworth. The lyrical ballads, that was a proper announcement of romanticism. So nobody can deny this fact. Note it down. इसको notes बना के लिख लो. Nobody can deny this fact that 1798 the romanticism starts. Then there was a question why William Wordsworth is not a Victorian writer. When Victorians start from 1837 and Wordsworth died by 1850, so why he is not a Victorian writer? It's because by nature he was a romantic writer and whatever he wrote was in romantic tradition. So whatever he wrote was romantic tradition, whatever he tried to say was romantic tradition. So just because he was alive during the time of Victoria, that doesn't make him a Victorian author. So make sure you remember these points. One last point that you have to remember and add is John Keats. When people study romantic literature, these are the exceptions in those ages. People think entire romanticism is inspired by French Revolution, the German philosophy, Sturm und Drang. No. John Keats was the one who was not influenced by any revolution or any movement. Keats was the only romantic writer who was not inspired by any French Revolution, any German philosophy, anything like that. The most aloof person. And that was the only thing P.B. Shelley didn't like in him, that Keats does not have revolutionary spirit. You will not find Keats asking you to fight back in any poetry. Keats was always happy, smiling, finding peace, looking for peace. He was melancholic, going away from society, finding seclusion. And the only reason Shelley didn't like him because Shelley was revolutionary. Shelley would ask you to fight. Shelley would ask you to go for change, to make things new. If winter comes, can spring be far behind? And Keats was like that. Completely satisfied with his six senses, sensuousness, a thing of beauty, joy forever. Keats is somebody who would see beauty in anything. His famous work, Ode to Autumn. Imagine autumn is connected to death, deadness, Patjhad. You must have heard a lot of Bollywood songs. We have all those songs related to spring, Basant. We do not have any Patjhad song. And Keats says, where are the songs of spring? Where are they? Think not of them, thou hast thy music too. And Keats says that you are beautiful in your sense. Don't let someone define your beauty who has a perfection idea related to spring. He says, forget spring, don't care about spring. As autumn, you have thy beauty. This is the time of autumn. See the cloudy weather, yellowish leaves, dry air. That's autumn. Autumn itself is beautiful. So these are the answers of your queries related to this thing. And you must understand the difference of these things. Whether you go for top level exam of UPSC and you have to answer those differences to define those ages, or you go for competitive exams like CUET, NET, you must understand what are those minute points so that you can understand and define. Now today what you have to do, read the characteristics of Elizabethan literature, characteristics of Victorian literature, because these are the most happening ages. And also read the difference between Romanticism and Pre-Romanticism. In next class, I'll ask questions from you. Thank you so much.